Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. I'm Enrique, my co host Vince, with a special Central Florida guest. I love this brother, and I'm so happy to have him on the show today, but I'll let Vince introduce.
Yes, good morning indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are excited to continue our lineup of dynamic speakers. As Enrique pointed out, we're back in Central Florida to speak with Allie Braswell, the Vice President of Cultural Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at VyStar Credit Union. Welcome to be on the show, Allie. So let's just dive in and start by telling us a little bit about you.
Well, Enrique and Vince, thanks so much for having me join you in this format, this forum. Love you right back, brothers. And, that's what we got to do is stand together, support each other. So when you all extended the invitation, how could I not say yes? And I'm glad to be joining you here. And to tell you about my role with VyStar, a little short over almost 9 months ago, I joined VyStar. Which is the largest credit union in Northeast Florida. It's the 16th largest in the nation and the #1 lender. So I say all that to say in our 68-year history, it's been all about serving people. And so 9 months ago, they decided to launch into the diversity, equity, inclusion space to have their own program. So I was delighted to be selected to come in and build and lead that program. And it's just been an unbelievable 9 months. In fact, earlier this week, we held the first ever virtual summit for women in the month of Women's History Month on the topic of intersectionality, how sometimes when different dimensions of diversity come together, we end up being marginalized even more. But, with our CEO and our leadership team, we want to change that narrative to where these intersections become positives, where if you happen to be a woman and you happen to be Hispanic or you're African American, that's not a downside to you. That's a plus for an organization in that they're bringing in new, innovative ideas, different experiences that help the organizations compete. And so I'm excited to be leading that work, and we can talk about more of what else is going on, but great to be here with you this morning.
And we're fortunate to have you this morning. You started this new role 9 months new, right? Brand new, and you're getting to take it from the ground up. And I see nothing but great stuff ahead. So tell us a little bit about your specific role with VyStar.
That's a great question, Enrique. And so when you think about my role as the Vice President of Cultural Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, we've actually brought culture and DEI together so that what we're doing is based upon our census of our employees. We're building a culture where everyone has a sense of belonging. So coming in, we had to write a diversity and inclusion policy because there wasn't one. But how can you have a foundation for something if you don't have a grassroots effort that defines what we're going to go do and what we're hoping to achieve? So we wrote our diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, equity being the key word there. And then we also rolled out our visions and goals for 2020, of which was standing up employee resource groups that never existed before around the protected classes of the Civil Rights Act, but also expanding that into social networks. So very proud to tell you, and I got the gray hair to prove it, that in 9 months, we rolled out 10 VyStar resource groups from La Voz de Miente to Shades of Success, to our veterans group, to Viability that deals with disability, to young professionals, and then social networks around some of the age dimensions like our older, wiser, livelier seniors, otherwise known as the owls, and to our PALS group where parents are leaders too, which, in 2020 really did pay out because parents had to do everything from be employed to mom to dad to teacher, and husband and wife. We still had to fit those roles in, but this group came together, really organically to say, how do we help each other cope through 2020 and deal with this new normal of working and living and just existing in a crazy environment where we were home most of the time, but still having multiple roles. So In rolling out those groups, it was a lot of passion, but I'll tell you the key to our success, our secret sauce was our people who really wanted to be able to engage, and they drove it. And if that wasn't enough, we finished the year strong and jumped right into planning the Women's Summit on intersectionality. And our goal is not just to celebrate the particular months of the year, but to have the diversity, equity, inclusion lens extend to every aspect of our business. That is a part of our strategic plan and our business plan. And that as departmental leaders hire, promote, and acquire new talent, that we're doing that on the most diverse means as possible. And we're creating the word, like I said, equity, equitable solutions, and equitable thought. So when you look at it, we'll be focused around workforce, and we'll also be focused on supplier diversity, which is leading the way in the credit union industry, because less than 36% of credit unions are doing any type of diversity, equity, inclusion program. And then even you cut that in half around supplier diversity. So over our next 3-year strategy, we're rolling out a platform and a program that we hope will have a diversity, equity, inclusion lens in all of our leadership, but also extending that down to where if you work at VyStar, we become a destination employer where people want to come to work.
I would just say VyStar Credit Union deserves a gold star. So, in inclusion and D&I. So thank you. My hat's off to you. And interesting enough, you've been employed 9 months. So you were in the thick of when the pandemic hit. So obviously you thrived, but interesting. Let's just chat about how is VyStar holding up and what's on the forefront and what you're currently doing, in addition to what you mentioned at VyStar.
Well, you know what, you're spot on. Coming in right after the George Floyd murder and having to deal with that, we wanted, our CEO made a clear statement to our community and to our employees that we were going to stand against systemic oppression in any form, and that we were going to stand for social justice for everyone. And so one of the recurring themes coming out of the Women's Summit even was that we stand for equity in the workplace for everyone. We stand for social justice for everyone, and we stand against systemic oppression across the board. And so VyStar is going to continue to lead in that way. But as you can see, we're expanding in Central Florida right now. So it's not only making a statement, but it's putting our money where our mouth is by creating jobs in the different dimensions of the community that we serve. And when people really think about it, members own the credit union. So when we increase our membership and we diversify our membership, that right there is empowering. So through our VyStar at Work programs, we're bringing financial literacy to the area. We've opened branches in Deltona, Oviedo, Sanford, and downtown Orlando, and coming soon to Kissimmee and to Winter Garden and Mount Dora. So as we continue to do our footprint, one of the things was to do smart expansion, but make sure that we're prepared to serve our community. And I'm so proud of our contact center because they're listening. We just created our Spanish queue in our contact center to be able to begin to handle that dimension of diversity better. Because in our contact center, their culture is have an unbelievable performance every day, so that people walk away knowing that we took care of them. When you hit our branches, it's a yes culture of, we want to find a way to say yes, not no. And so when you bring all that together around diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's looking at people where they are, and it's putting the people we serve first because they're the most important, and then developing solutions like over in our lending program, and I promise to take a breath here in a minute, over in our lending program, one of the things we just did was take AI into the loan decision-making side. By bringing artificial intelligence in, we hope to strip away the human bias that may exist. When we looked at that statistically, we're expecting a jump from 21 to 30% in approval loans for different backgrounds of underrepresented minority participation. So people are applying for loans, we're trying to remove that human bias that might exist. So when you hear me talk about developing diversity, equity, and inclusion lens throughout the business, it's not just on our workforce or our suppliers, it's also in how we do business and develop products and services that help.
I absolutely love the model of the call center and all the initiatives. AI is so integral in a lot of the efforts that most companies are uh, going down the road with. And I'm sure that that's going to bring in a lot of business. So I'm excited for that. Talking about future things, tell us a little bit about the things that are in the horizon for VyStar and DEI in your group.
So from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint, we just brought on a workforce manager, and her whole focus is how do we create diverse talent pipelines? And it's not just at the entry level, but how do we do it throughout the organization? So that even when our C-suite opens up, that we're looking at how do we build that talent pool, and how do we help train our management to remove the unconscious bias that may be inhibitors to making sure that we have as diverse a population as possible. And one of the ways we're doing that, Enrique and Vince, is that we benchmark where we are. We took a census of what does our senior leadership look like, and what do we aspire for it to look like. We've got a great senior team in place led by Brian Wolfberg, our CEO, and their commitment to diversity is real. It's an intentional, deliberate act towards diversity. It's not lip service. One of the things I asked our CEO when you're in that interview process and they say, well, what questions do you have for me? I looked at Brian through our virtual world and said, are you intentional and deliberate about diversity, equity, and inclusion? And he said, most assuredly. And you know what? I'm proud to say that that's real at VyStar Credit Union. And so much so that he opened our Women's Summit this week. And if you get a chance to take a look at it, you can go to VyStarWomenSummit.org and see the replay. But when you got a leader talking openly about his life, about the dimensions of diversity that he experiences, and I love it when he says, why is a young white male talking to you about diversity in the finance industry? He says, because it's time, it's overdue, and we need to bring about diversity. So when diversity is the given, inclusion is the goal, but equity is what we need to talk about. And I always like to use the analogy of, if we were all three of us going out here and riding down the West Orange Trail, I might need a different bike. Trust me, I will, okay? With two metal knees, that bike's gotta be good, right? But if Vince is taller than I, he might need a taller bike. And if Enrique happens to be shorter than me, but if we give us all the same bike, we'll have difficulty going down the West Orange Trail. But if we listen and we give you the right tool, the right vehicle for you to move, we can all travel together. And as we sojourn together, what better the experience when we can meet each other where we are and be equitable in that. And so we try to bring that principle to everything that we're doing. We're not going to tell you that we're there overnight because that's unrealistic, but I can tell you that we're making headway. And since Brian and the leadership team came in 4 years ago, they pledged to build a company that represented the membership and to be forward leading in this. And I can tell you that we're stepping up and doing that.
It definitely sounds that way. And it reminds me of an old, I'm dating myself, crusty old Chief Master Sergeant used to say, so goes the head, so goes the body. And Brian being that head, he's leading the charge and definitely being equitable and listening and being intentional. So that's great. So let's transition a little bit about you sharpening the tools in your toolbox. So Allie, talk to us about your professional development. What areas do you work on to improve your capabilities as a leader?
Wow, that's a good question. So I am a student of John Maxwell. I'm also about to complete that certification. But I always believe that you can learn. So I read a lot. I consume a lot to try to stay in touch with what are the going trends. I've even gone back to school to pick up an advanced certification through Cornell University on diversity to make sure my skills in this space are up to par and I'm not left behind somewhere. YouTube. And so I'm in the advanced course of Cornell, and I'll finish that for the advanced certificate. And I always believe that, I go back to the Marine Corps where I learned a lot was know yourself and seek self-improvement. And you know where you're missing. So I'm looking to fill those gaps and always to identify how I can grow, because even I was taught something about a year and a half ago when I took an assessment on DE&I, and being a diversity, equity, inclusion professional, you're expecting to be pegging it out. And I fell into the intercultural developmental inventory at minimization. And I'm like, something's wrong with your test. But when I looked at it, I really had to honestly say, yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I minimize certain things that maybe I need to advance myself into thinking and change my way of thinking. And how can we do that? You do that by consuming information so that you can displace what I call myth information, MYTH, myth information with real information. A lot of times media and different stories want to drive us to the myth they want us to believe. And I'd rather provide the truth to what we should know. And that's what I do. So that's one way I sharpen my skills. I attend other seminars and engage with colleagues like yourself so that I can learn, because one of the great things is on this second trip around to 30, and I won't tell you how close that is, but Marine Corps birthday is a good day for Allie too. But on the second trip around to 30, I still feel young and youthful and energized, and I constantly want to feed my brain and my experience with new experiences, because I've always go back to one master sergeant, like you said, Master Sergeant told me, don't call yourself an expert, because the day you call you an expert, you're dated, because things change the very next day. So constantly staying up on the trends, tuning into professional development opportunities, courses and different things, listening to other colleagues. I really do like the ability to connect with other DEI professionals and learn from them, hear something or a different approach to how to explain something. And it has really benefited me greatly. So I hope that answers the question. But it's a constant seeking self-improvement, knowing what I know now, but how do I gather more? And then sharing openly with others so that they share openly with me.
Yeah, I was as you was talking, and I love that professional development. I'm also a JMT team member, and you talked about Cornell, and I was like, yes, because I'm about to go in that venture with them on the DEI space. There's a lot of things that we get from leaders. And undoubtedly, you mentioned that Master Sergeant, right, gave you a good piece of advice. There are a lot of people coming up right now in not only in leadership, but also in DEI space, culture, inclusion, and all that. What would you give an aspiring leader coming up right now, something that you got when you was coming up and say, man, that was golden, it got me through, and you would like to share with them today?
Wow, that's a great question. The golden nugget for me was to reach out and build relationships. Because through those relationships, they're going to connect you. You're one connection away from opening the door. You remember that old book? I call it old because it's been around for a while. But you remember Who Moved My Cheese? And I'm always going to be that one venturing out around the corner and trying to find new. But through new relationships, you open up new nuggets and new opportunity and experiences. And I think building key relationships and being open enough to be transparent to build real relationships were keys to my success as a leader, because in doing that, I've been in this crazy world gifted enough to have someone nominate me to become a civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army. That less than 12 African-American individuals serve now, and over the course of 100 years since 1922, there's only been 600 plus individuals ever to serve in this role. But it was through relationships. It's through then sharing your knowledge. I think as you build those relationships, you share openly what you have to give, and then others pour back into you. And so someone coming up in leadership is know yourself, seek self-improvement, constantly study your craft. Number two, build great relationships. And those can be mentoring relationships where you're being the mentee or you're being a mentor to somebody to help grow them into their next level. And those are two of the key nuggets. I mean, there's probably about 12 more, but those are the two that really have benefited me greatly.
Well, no, thank you for sharing those two nuggets. As a man who's been twice, second trip around 30, we also face challenges and things that trip us up. So just curious, we'll love for you to share, how do you handle challenges you face or currently facing?
That's a great question. And as a leader, you're going to run into them. I think you meet them head on. But you take time to assess and remove emotion from the decisions that have to be made. When we're emotional, which as human beings we are, we sometimes go down a path and then only to say, I totally misjudged this, but I'm halfway through this. So try to strip away emotion, really assess things, and then come up with a game plan. So if I got to change a mindset, how do I go about educating this person that hopefully changes the mindset? Being flexible, being able to pivot and give a little to gain a lot. Sometimes when you give just a couple of inches in your belief or where you're trying to go or the path you're going down, you can, as my grandmother would say, you can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. So sometimes you got to pour out a little bit of honey and then realize that you can give up something in order to gain a lot. And then you're going to have conflict. And sometimes you got to know which battle to fight and which one to let go. And, a no doesn't mean no forever. It means no for now. File that plan, file that idea away, go out there and build up some more credibility and integrity with that particular challenge or that person or that entity. And then broach it at another time where then now you got some equity in there that you can use to move forward and have people see a different thing. But there will always be challenge. The key thing is how do you react to it? I think Dr. King said it best is it's not the measure of a man when things are going well. It's the measure of a man when things are challenging or tough as to what their character is and how they move forward. And I try to live by that. So I don't always get it right. I'm gonna tell you straight out. There's some days that I have to go over there and talk to Allie, as that Marine Corps staff sergeant to say, hey man, this one you gotta let go. My kids will probably tell you that way.
I love those strategies. That great points on facing challenges. One of the things that we've been posed during this last year was change, right? There was a lot of change that came about this last year. And undoubtedly, just like with challenges, you have to build some strategies around change. So, what strategies would you share with someone that's facing change right now, or some that you implement yourself?
Enrique, you bring up a very good point. Change is inevitable. I can remember being a young sergeant over in Rota, Spain, and I put up on our board that, change is our mission. Just when you think things are going good, something comes along, you got to go in another direction. I always tend to look at the glass as half full rather than half empty. 2020 was a tough time, and I don't want to diminish anyone of having fought through that struggle. And for the families who have lost someone, my heart goes out. We lost family that were close to us during this pandemic. So, we've had a lot to deal with. And what I try to do is my faith comes first. I would just tell you, for me, that is my faith in something better, bigger than myself, can help me get through that. If I stay focused, I can. Dealing with the challenges and the change and pivoting in the direction of positive. It's really easy to be pulled in that direction of negativity, but continuing to push positives, feeding your mind with positives, even though sometimes like my bonus son that adopted me. When you get older, people start attaching themselves. But my bonus son says it better, and I love him for it. He says, sometimes you got to step up, but you also know when to step back. So like with all the change that's going on in the world and you can consume media 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, sometimes it's good to step up, but it's also good to step back so that you can cocoon around yourself, fill yourself with positives so that you can handle the change that's coming at you. When you do that, it's reinforcing yourself with the positive things that you know, like the Maxwell, listening to John Maxwell. I was listening to him yesterday, Minute with Maxwell, and he's talking about, you got to go and understand your why before you get to your wow. And, constantly reinforcing the positives in your lives help you navigate the change because change is inevitable. It's going to come. I'm going to walk out of here later today. Something's going to change. How I deal with that and face that change, and based upon what I put in my gas tank of positives, is going to help me navigate and overcome the negatives that would try to drive me in the wrong direction. So that's the Allie philosophy of how I deal with it. But I think through 2020, there were days where it was tough. There were days where really dealing with the pandemic. And I thought we had two pandemics. We had a pandemic in terms of health, but we also had a social pandemic in dealing with racial injustice and civil unrest and insightful speech that just drove division. And so for example, stepping up and consuming as much of that as I needed, but stepping back to say I don't have to take it all in. When it came to the healthcare, I took the healthcare steps. And I encourage people. I am one of those 1 point something million that are fully vaccinated. I encourage others to go out and get vaccinated, and let's all come a part of being able to create this herd immunity so that we don't have our seniors in jeopardy. Now we're seeing our young people in jeopardy, and being proponents of taking the steps that are right. And that's just how I tend to manage the negativity. But I'm going to tell you, there are days where I just really had to shelter, leverage the positives to get through.
Absolutely. And your words from your bonus son, it's inspiring. No one that's take a step forward or need to take a step back are very key there. And I love what you shared about know yourself, seek self-improvement, and by all means build relationships. All those are great uh, accolades and great things to share with this audience. And thank you for being here. For folks that are listening in, Allie, how do they contact you or VyStar Credit Union?
Well, you know what? You can go out to VyStarCU.org and you can learn all about our credit union. You have the ability to go through membership there, or you can walk into one of our branches. And, we're all over. We have over 80 branches throughout North and Central Florida now, and we're continuing to grow. But if you want to reach me, you can reach me at Braswell A. So Braswell, first initial A, at VyStarCU.org. Would love to hear from you if I can be of help or assistance. That's what I believe in. My quote when a friend of mine asked me, Allie, what would you like to be remembered by? I said, you know what? I would like to be remembered by the common denominator. And that common denominator is that we are all human. Vince and Enrique, imagine when we can just see each other as humans and the possibilities, when we can just approach everything with humanity and caring. And it's not about the color of our skin, our origin, our orientation, or our gender. It's just that I should care about you because you're an incredible human being here experiencing this thing with me. And I'm just excited and want to thank both of you for thinking enough of me to invite me to come and join you and share. Would love to come back at any time. But, the key here is keep doing what you're doing. Want to encourage you to continue going out here and filling that leadership void with great information. And I hope I've done that as well today.
And that you have, and we're so grateful for you joining us today. You mentioned early on, the value of networking. And I remember the first time I met you, I was at a VBI session back when our dear friend Rogue Gala was heading that effort. And so it's all been a network experience, right? That's how we ended up here today. So thank you for being with us and sharing your experience with your new company, as well as your leadership experience and what you're doing in that regard. And folks, if you want to reach us at the Leadership Void Podcast, it's as easy as the Leadership Void gmail.com. Send us any inquiries, special guests that you would like to see on our program, veterans that are doing great things in their community and in their space, as well as, hey, if you notice we have our shirts on. If you would like for us to represent your company while we speak or during one of our sessions, we will gladly do that. And you can email us that information. But once again, Allie, thank you for being with us and providing such great insight. I'm loving what you're doing. I'm so grateful that VyStar has decided to go down this road and put all in and have you head that effort. So thank you.
Thanks again for having me. And you guys stay safe and healthy out there.
Well, and my last words are that, Allie, you're doing great things, and gold star to VyStar, definitely Credit Union. And we are also moving next week to another dynamic speaker in the D&I space. But this individual is coming from West Virginia. So stay tuned for next Wednesday as well, as we start off and kick off the month of April. And speaking of the month of April 1st, we're going to do our buddy check, which we call the radio check, on the 1st and the 15th at 1900, which is 7 p.m. Just a space for us to get together and just, chip away at that social distancing, just talk a little bit from each other's perspective, what's going on from the veteran community, military community. So we hope to see you on the 1st of April at 7 p.m. But for today, we honor Allie for being here. Thank you for the great work you're doing, and Godspeed out there, brother.
Same to both of you.